Okay, our next speaker is an industry veteran and a good friend. I had the pleasure of working with him when he founded SurgiQuest, but knew him even before when he was at Tyco Healthcare. Kurt Azarbarzin is a true entrepreneur and innovator. You can see from his resume on the first screen, which he'll go into greater detail on. He's been around the block, but he's taken a company from idea to exit, which is not an easy thing to do. So Kurt, we're grateful that you're here. Sorry that you can't be here. We understand that you're super busy doing things that you wish you weren't doing this week. And we'll leave it at that. And with no further ado, let me introduce Kurt Azarbarzin to talk about what it takes to get over the goal line.
Thank you, Steve. I truly appreciate the introduction. And I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. As you know, I live for these days to be together and enjoy times together and share memories. So I apologize for not being there, but hopefully next year. By the way of introduction, I've been in industry for almost 40 years, right out of college, started at US Surgical, and was part of the whole minimally invasive boom in late 80s, early 90s, and really built an amazing relationship with industry leaders, both on the company and corporate side and also on the surgical side. And I was just very fortunate to be part of that. And then from there, I went on and truly started my company called SurgiQuest. And I would call it a true startup in the basement of my house with a dog barking and wife screaming at me why there's so many cars in the driveway. So we did that for about 6 months before I raised the funding, and I was able to raise my first round of financing. And 10 years later, we were, projecting 100 million in revenue and sold a company at 265 million to ConMed. And I will talk about how we went about it and the whole story in the next few slides. From there, I was recruited to become the CEO of Verb Surgical Robotic, which was the joint venture between Google and Johnson & Johnson. It was an amazing experience, probably one of the coolest job in the industry to be able to work with J&J and Google and just absolutely have a lot of fun and make things happen. And the good thing with that was that the company got acquired again by Johnson & Johnson. And so I became part of Johnson & Johnson organization. And while I was there, this opportunity came up to become the CEO of a company called Colibris MX. It's an endoluminal robotic platform for both transanal and transoral surgery. And it's just the most exciting space. You and I have been talking about this for 15, 20 years. It's a dream of mine, a dream of yours and everybody else that I've worked with. So it's really an absolute pleasure to get back on the horse of writing another startup. And so it's truly a startup and I'm excited about it. So in the next slide, I just wanted to kind of go through, innovation. Really, it's all about innovation, and innovation is what's create new markets. And we've gone through so much of that in the past years, and I think what we felt was that laparoscopy needed innovation. Laparoscopy was getting stale. There was a lot of limitations associated with laparoscopy, and that was really our focus, was access and laparoscopy. So the way I look at this is I always say, the way to go about this is to have your goals very, very clearly identified and don't get off course, stay the course. And so our mission was solve the problem as a whole. Right. We didn't want to just come up with a product. We wanted to go and solve a problem that we felt existed, which is access and limitation in access for laparoscopy. And then come up with truly meaningful benefits and better outcomes. And obviously think outside the box and don't let limitations slow you down. Focus on the goal and really drive that initiative. And then don't be satisfied with good enough. I would tell you there was plenty of times where we thought we hit the ball out of the ballpark, but we found out that we were not there yet, and we had to reinvent, and we had to redesign. So don't settle that, and don't think good enough is good enough. You need to continue to push that envelope, and this is the most important piece. And this, Steve. I live for my customer. I believe in the relationship that you need to have with your customer from the beginning. Most CEOs of startups do this way late. If you remember, we were having very early labs where the product was truly at an early stage, where we were doing cadaver labs and animal labs, and it was just it was early on and continuous involvement with the customer and gaining their feedback and truly partnering with them. That's probably what made this company, was the partnership that we established with you and some of the other thought leaders in the industry. And I'm just so blessed to have that. So that is probably the most important piece of the equation that I believe in, and I truly live by. So, and here's the other key things that you need to think about. To be successful, you need to have 3 out of the 5 of these items that are on the list. And I highlight the 2 in red, which are the 2 most important. You got to go after a large potential market, right? For you to get investors involved and get them excited and have this potential upside, the market has to be large and has to have a potential for growth. Unmet needs are really important, and that word enabling is something that everybody uses, but you have to focus on enabling something, right? Not just go add, I have a technology and I want to find a home. No. The goal is to enable something, right? And that's really important. Team is also very important. You need to have a team that can help you get there, both from the customer side and also from the technology side. Intellectual property, that is the value creating. Without the intellectual property, your company is really not worth much. And so intellectual property, that's why I highlighted that in red. And then focus, and then more focus, and then more focus, and more focus. I would tell you that is the toughest thing as a startup CEO, is to keep focus and not get off track, and not get, take a left or right, and not really focus on what's important. So those are the 5 key success factors. I would tell you, you need 3 out of 5. Okay, you may not have to have all 5, but you need to have 3 out of 5 to be able to, be successful and get funding and be able to, take your company to the next level. So how we did it at SurgiQuest was that we took a holistic approach. We knew that the current platforms were old, antiquated, really technology that has been around for many years and had a lot of limitations. You remember the days we talk about gaskets and seals and trocars and how limiting they were, and how they were causing friction, and they're cutting and tearing and leaking. Insufflation tubing was just, really not had anything other than just, flow gas. There was nothing else other than just flowing gas into the abdominal cavity. And then insufflators were almost 1960 technologies, right? They were really old technology. There was very little intellectual, power in them, and there's very little digital power inside. So we took this approach of saying, go after those limitations, go after those issues, but address it holistically. And what that means is nobody else was doing it, right? So Medtronic and Ethicon had the trocars, but they didn't have insufflation tubing and they didn't have insufflators. Stryker had insufflators and insufflation tubing, but they weren't selling trocars and disposable trocars. So it was one of those things where we needed to have all the components to make sure that we can optimize a system in a way where it truly was differentiated and enabling. So by doing that, we were able to create this really truly a unique platform called AirSeal, where you completely manage the insufflation and the abdominal cavity with your system. And we were able to reduce the pressure inside the abdominal cavity, which was really the goal for all laparoscopists. We all know that if, higher the pressure, the more stress the patient is on. So what we did was really clearly went after those key benefits, from surgeon side to the clinical side to the hospital and economics. these are the three, what I would call paths that you have to follow. Surgeons are your customers. You have to create the benefits that, resonates with surgeons. You have to obviously do better for your patient, and you have to have the better clinical outcome. And then obviously at the end, it's got to make economic sense. And so we were able to deliver on all three of these, key pathways, and with ton of data, with ton of proof, because you could just say what you want, but if you don't have the proof and clinical data and the adoption rates, it's not meaningful. And as I say, standard of care was the goal. You remember, Steve, the conversations we were always having was that the goal was for us to become at some point standard of care. And today, I would tell you, we are pretty much standard of care in robotic surgery and in advanced minimally invasive surgery, where you need that extra capabilities. So obviously, it wasn't easy. You remember these challenges. I have to say it 10 years, it took 10 years to get to that goal. We started the company in 2005 and we sold it in early 2016. So here's some key things that I wanted to highlight and how we addressed it. So early funding is really important because without money, you can't do it. and there's questions when you are going out and fundraising, especially when you're going after a commodity product. So, trocars were a commodity. So we had to really find that true investor that believed in our story and understood the unmet needs. And that took probably a 9 to 11 months. I probably talked to over 50 venture capital, early investors, angel investors, and finally found that one group that really understood it and appreciated it. And by the way, the person that was leading my round was actually a surgeon. So he understood the unmet, what we were going after, and he appreciated the value we could create. So early funding is really important. You got to focus on finding those right partners as investors, because investors could be amazing, but they could also be a big pain. And there's not a CEO or startup CEO that I know that has not had experience on both sides. So you got to be really careful on early funding. Technology limitations was the other one. You remember the days where, we couldn't keep insufflation. We had, issues with performance and things like that. So, and there were nights, I will be very honest with you, there were nights where we thought we were going to give up. We thought we couldn't fix the issues. And, 1 o'clock at night, the team is, coming back in the morning and that we come up with another angle approach, or we came up with partnerships that enabled us to get to our goal. So technology limitations are always going to happen, but don't give up, right? And always think about partnerships. And as I said, how we address our technology limitations is we identified industry partners that really helped us to achieve our goals, because we were not experts in that area and we needed the expertise there. So don't give up and continue to focus on that. Valuation and evaluations in global market dynamics. I raised money in 2008. I had to raise my C-round financing. The market was crashing. The valuations were getting destroyed. But I did not, at that time, I did not care as much about the valuation as long as I could get the right investors to invest in my company. A lot of startup CEOs focus too much on valuations and dilution. You need to focus on the value creating, and you need to focus on the goal. And that was probably the toughest thing for me to swallow, having to take a down round at C financing during this whole market crash in 2008. But don't forget, right after that, we got our next round of financing, and we had 2.5x up financing, which was amazing. So don't focus too much on valuation and dilution. Focus on partnerships and focus on your investors and the value the investor is going to bring to the table. Now, the next two are probably the toughest thing any startup CEO will tell you. Commercialization is very difficult. Is the most expensive part of any endeavor, and is also the toughest because now you have to go and build a team and build an infrastructure to be able to support the commercial footprint. We were in 48 countries worldwide. We had over 150 employees in our commercial machine, and we were competing with the two giants, Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic. You couldn't get bigger, but we focused. We believed in the cause. We partnered. Intuitive was probably our biggest ally. We built a really tight relationship with Intuitive because robotic was becoming really the future of surgery, and when we were adding a lot of value to that system, and then eventually was able to achieve our goals of commercialization. And we were growing our business 150% year over year, which is unheard of, right? These are enormous numbers. So I wanted to make sure that we covered that because it wasn't easy. Those long nights when I was calling you at midnight and brainstorming with you. And again, thank you and a lot of our friends for the partnership and advice that you gave me, and you were always there for me. But again, I really appreciate and I wanted to share that with everybody. So I truly believe that we went through this, what I would call a revolution in access, and created this low impact potential for surgery. And I really believe the future will be lower pressures and lower impact to the patient, because that's the best potential outcome that you could achieve in laparoscopy. And I'll finish by this last slide. You always want to focus on your stakeholders. Your stakeholders are your physicians, your investors, your payers, and obviously your patients. And I truly believe that we did that by really focusing and partnering with our customers and our shareholders. So I'll stop here and any questions you may have, but Steve, I get very passionate when it comes to these things. So hopefully I covered all the bases and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
So Kurt, that was great, and I know where some of the secrets are. So I'll ask a couple of them. Should be fun. It's an act of bravery to go out and start a new business. When I first met you were at Medtronic, pretty big position. What made you pick this technology? How did you find it? What was the inspiration to leave the big company and go out on your own?
Yeah, I would tell you access. So I was the global head of R&D for U.S. Surgical and Tyco Healthcare, and 21 years there. Access was the single biggest issue between the IP between Applied, Ethicon and U.S. Surgical, and then also the limitations associated with it, and all the issues we had from a performance standpoint. So this technology came across my desk as an intellectual property that I looked at, and we actually thought about acquiring it, but at the time Tyco had its issues, as you know. Tyco Healthcare had some of issues, so that kind of did not happen. But I stayed in touch with the inventor, which was a surgeon. It was a GYN surgeon who invented the idea, and then so I did not like where Tyco was going. US Surgical was an innovative company, was known for innovation, and Tyco was this enormous big corporation that was just doing a lot of acquisitions. There's very little innovation. So I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, and I wanted to go back to the innovation space, and actually went out and acquired the technology. I went and bought the patents and basically started from scratch and developing it, from in the basement of my house with 5 engineers who were all from U.S. Surgical, by the way. We all kind of believed in the cause, and we put the band together, and that was the story.
So you went out and really put skin in the game. You went out and bought the IP and started the company. So you didn't license it. What made you buy it instead of license it?
Well, actually, let me fix this. So we there's a difference between licensing and having the rights. So licensing, you have, you don't own it, right? You can build on the IP. It's very limiting. So we made a deal where we acquired it, so we had control of the IP, but we did have an earnout and a what I would call a royalty, small
Sure.
royalty, because I couldn't afford the kind of money these guys are looking for. So it was kind of a, hey, here's upfront money. Here's me, industry leader here that wants to do this, and I'm going to go get it done. And in return, you get, royalties and an earnout in some kind of an acquisition. And as a matter of fact, the people that I acquired the technology from made significant money at the end when the acquisition happened. Because the earnout for them was significant as well. So not only they made money up front, but they made money at the end. So it was a hybrid approach.
But you felt that you had pretty good freedom to operate through that deal. We started a different company. We started Starion, and we licensed technology from Columbia, and you're dealing with that big academic machine, which can be challenging at times. What did you think the killer app was going to be? Because we all had great belief. We knew it was cool. We knew it was noisy in the beginning, but I wouldn't say that we had zeroed in on the killer app.
No, the belief I had was limitations associated with gaskets. When we were developing, 5 to 12 trocars, it's you asking this material to elongate 350%. And, oh, by the way, it can't tear, and it's got to be lubricious, right? So you go ask the suppliers, can you give me a material that does this? And the guy would look at you and say, well, why don't you go to the moon? Maybe such a material exists. You can't have something elongate that much and then, be tear resistant and also lubricious. So the idea was getting rid of this gasket. That was really the whole concept, knowing that it addresses all these issues, but more importantly, having no gasket allows you to put multiple instruments down the trocar, which was also a big deal at the time with single incision and about the ability to put odd-shaped instruments. Today, all instruments, as you and I talked about this, all instruments today are still round in geometry. Why? Because the gasket forces you to be round. But with AirSeal, you could put square-shaped instruments, you could put oval-shaped instruments. So getting rid of all those limitations was really the key focus for us. But as you know, that's not why AirSeal is so powerful nowadays. It's the ability, and for the stable pneumo that it creates, and ability to have lower pressures. That's really the what it call it, the holy grail for AirSeal. But that was not in design. I would tell you that. You know that, and I know that. The design was get rid of the gasket and make it function without gaskets.
We had a couple of epiphanies, like the day I put a catheter through the AirSeal and nothing happened. That was like such an amazing day. I go, how come we're not losing pneumo? And your engineers go, that's because you're in training room air. Is that important? It's like, yeah, that's going to be very important. I think one of the fundamental sort of disagreements that we had, you and I, is that I was ready to go full air laparoscopy. And you said, no, that's going to be a regulatory hurdle that you didn't want to broach. Why don't you just sort of talk about some of that kind of challenge?
Well, the one thing that was clear was air. It does not absorb as quickly in body. So that was one thing that was clear, number one. And then number two was in just in case there is any type of subcutaneous emphysema or something like that, you want that gas to absorb as quickly as possible. And that was really the concern, right? The chances of subcutaneous emphysema was it's always there with any laparoscopy, as you know. But if there is air introduced, then it makes that procedure, it makes the outcome and the recovery longer. And that's why we focused heavily on, as you know, on recovering very quickly with CO2, and also we indicate in our indication for use that make sure you understand that there is mixture that going on, which is really have to be careful about. So that was really the only idea was FDA. You had to prove that air is going to be safe in a case of subcutaneous emphysema.
And also with ignition, because CO2 suppresses ignition. So I was sort of hopped up on worldwide laparoscopy, free yourself from the tanks. But I think as I've reflected on it in years, that the regulatory burden that the company may have found itself in. So I'm going to go on record publicly. I was wrong. You were right.
It was the team, the entire team. As you know, we had the best of the best. I was so fortunate to have partners like yourself. So we really listened to the team, and the team gave us a lot of good advice. So thanks to the team for helping us do it. It was
a ton of fun. Now, you talked a lot about the robot, and there's some new innovations coming out from AirSeal, and you're not affiliated with the company anymore, so you can talk about how proud you are of it. But one of the great epiphanies was transluminal surgery. And none of us saw it coming. What was it like when, the folks that were doing transluminal surgery, Tamis, the Matt Alberts of the world, said, hey, this would be really useful? Did you start to have a greater sense of optimism when you thought you had a killer option? What does that feel like?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the transanal piece was huge because you're in a small space. There's a lot of collapsing going on. There was a lot of smoke, and they just couldn't keep up. The bellowing was happening. They just could not keep up, and it was like a light went off. Right? Oh my God! I can actually conduct the procedure without losing my space and recreating the space constantly because it's such a small, tight space. So that was like the biggest I would say value add was transanal transluminal procedures, and then obviously all advanced robotic procedures, it was huge because you could go on lower pressures and you could see significantly better outcomes, which is amazing. I mean, that was like the best thing. That was like Christmas gift in July. It was like it was amazing. It was really, really powerful.
So, it's a 10-year journey. So there's a lot of people that want to get the IP, get a rough prototype. Do you think industry has any appetite for buying rough prototypes in this day and age?
No, sorry.
And I think, and so you had to go out and sell it. Do you think that's just what the market
you have to have about a year of commercialization. I sit on a bunch of boards, as you know, startup board. I love that. That's like my passion to help, advise folks, and truly commercialization and what I call traction, right? So you have to show. It doesn't have to be like us, where we're in 45 countries and we're growing our business 150% year over year. We're 100 million in revenue. It doesn't have to be there. We had to get there because we were in a very crowded market with kind of a commodity product. So we had to prove it even more. But if you can show traction in one region deep, and I call it narrow and deep, and you can show the value. That's all it needs, and it typically takes about a year of commercialization in a couple of regions. And that's really what they're going to look for. They're going to want to know that this has legs, that they can put it in their bag and it can, create the value that creates for a small company.
Yeah, really incredible journey. I'm honored to have been a small part of the journey. And I hope everybody who's going to be watching this in the session sort of is taking notes on persistence, belief, vision, and a little bit of faith. And, it's really very important lessons. Kurt Azarbarzin, thank you so much. What a great pleasure to have you with us today, and we hope to see you at Sages next year.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I have to say, I wouldn't have done it without you guys. I mean, you know, my thanks to you and all of our partners. Thank you so much. Sorry to miss you this time. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.